Look at the life you are trying to build. Strip away the details and look at its shape, its deepest aim. For most of us, it is the same: a life with as little suffering as possible, comfortable, safe, smooth, free of pain, free of struggle, free of anything that hurts. We have made comfort the highest good, and we have, very nearly, achieved it. You are warmer, safer, better fed, and further from pain than almost any human who has ever lived. By every measure that your ancestors would have prayed for, you have already won. And yet, look around, look inward. We are, by our own reckoning, more anxious, more restless, more hollow, more fragile than perhaps any people in history. We removed so much of the suffering, and something went quietly wrong. More than a century ago, a philosopher saw this coming. He watched the modern world take shape, watched it aim everything at comfort. And he said something scandalous, something we still are not ready to hear. He said that a life which flees all suffering does not become happy. It becomes shallow, small, and hollow. That in running from pain, we were running from the very thing that gives a life its depth. His name was Friedrich Nietzsche, and he made one of the most difficult and dangerous claims in all of philosophy: that suffering is not the enemy of a meaningful life, that it may be its price, its forge, its precondition. And I want to be careful from the very first breath, because this idea, handled carelessly, becomes monstrous. It has been used to excuse every kind of cruelty, to glorify pain that should have been stopped. So we will hold it carefully by the handle, and we will turn the hardest light on it before we are done. But if there is truth in it, even a part, then it changes everything, because it would mean that the life you are building, the frictionless one, the safe one, may be quietly costing you the one thing comfort can never buy: a self with any depth at all. So, over the next while, we are going to follow Nietzsche down into the hardest question a person can ask: what is suffering for? And whether the thing you spend your whole life running from might turn out to be the very thing you most need to become who you could be. Let us start where everyone thinks they already know Nietzsche, with one line, perhaps the most quoted sentence in all of philosophy: "What does not kill me makes me stronger." It is printed on gym walls, tattooed on skin, repeated after every hardship, and almost everyone who says it has it, slightly but crucially, wrong. Because taken as most people take it, it is not only false, it is dangerous. Most people hear it as a promise, a law, that whatever hurts you automatically makes you stronger, that all suffering is secretly good for you, that every wound leaves you better than before, and that is simply not true. We all know it is not true. Some suffering does not strengthen, it shatters. It leaves people smaller, more afraid, more broken than before. Trauma is real. Some wounds never close. To tell a person crushed by grief that it must be making them stronger is not wisdom. It is a cruelty dressed as one. So Nietzsche did not mean the easy version. He was not stating a guarantee. He was pointing at a potential, a door hidden inside hardship that can be walked through, or not. The claim is not that suffering makes you stronger. It is that suffering carries the possibility of making you stronger, a possibility you can seize or be destroyed by. The same fire that forges one blade melts another into ruin. What decides is not the fire, it is what you bring to it, and whether you can find a way to be forged rather than consumed. And you have seen both outcomes. Take two people through the very same catastrophe, the same loss, the same illness, the same collapse. One comes out hardened into bitterness, shrunk, closed, ruined by it. The other comes out, somehow, deeper, softer where it matters, stronger where it counts, more alive to what is real. Same blow, two opposite fates. And the difference was never in the size of the wound. It was in what each of them was able to do with it. So the real question Nietzsche forces on us is not, will you suffer? That one is already answered. You will. Everyone does. No life, however comfortable, escapes it entirely. The real question is what you will do with the suffering that finds you anyway. Whether you will let it merely happen to you, or whether you can find inside it something to become. That is the whole game. Not avoiding the fire, but learning how to stand in it and be forged. Because Nietzsche made a far bolder claim than a line on a gym wall. He looked across all of human history, at everything we have ever made of real depth. The greatest art, the deepest wisdom, the music that breaks your heart open, the words that seem to know you better than you know yourself. And he asked a simple question. Where did all of it come from? What soil grew things this deep? And his answer was uncomfortable. None of it came from comfort. None of the great depths were grown in ease. They were forged, almost every one, in suffering. The discipline of great suffering, he wrote, has produced every elevation of humanity so far. Every one. The art you love most was likely born of someone's private agony. The wisdom you trust was paid for in pain. Comfort has never once produced anything deep. It was always the wound that did the work. Think of the pearl. We treasure it, we call it beautiful, but a pearl is not a gift. It is a wound answered. It begins as a grain of grit, a piece of pain lodged inside the oyster, something the creature cannot remove. So it does the only thing it can. It works on the pain, layer after layer, turning the thing that hurts it slowly into something luminous. There is no pearl without the grit, no beauty without the irritation it was built to answer. And the human soul, Nietzsche saw, can do the very same thing. But here, Nietzsche is careful, and so must we be, because he does not say suffering makes you a better person. He is not promising that pain makes you kind, or good, or moral. Often it does the opposite. Pain can make people bitter, cruel. He knew that. His claim is narrower and stranger. He said that great pain does not make us better, but it makes us more profound. It takes you down to a depth that comfort can never reach. It does not purify you, it deepens you. And this explains something you have surely noticed. The people with real depth, real understanding, the ones who seem to see into the heart of things, they are almost never the ones who had it easy. They are almost always the ones who have been through something, who have been deeply wounded and came back, carrying what they learned down there. It is as if only those who have been broken open can see the inside of things. The unwounded, however clever, stay somehow on the surface. Depth has a price, and the price is always some kind of pain. So if depth is grown in hardship, then something follows. Something that should frighten you about the comfortable life. Because comfort does not just fail to build you, it actively unbuilds you. Ease is not neutral. It is not a safe blank rest. It works on you, slowly. It softens what it touches, and to see how, you only have to look at the body. Because the body tells the truth that the soul tries to hide. Take a muscle. Give it resistance, weight, strain, something to fight against, and it grows, stronger, denser, more capable. But take that same muscle and remove all resistance. Let it rest, perfectly, comfortably, never strained, never challenged. And it does not stay the same. It wastes, it shrinks, it weakens day by day. This is the deep law of every living thing. What is not used is lost. What faces no resistance grows weak. Comfort to a muscle is not a reward. It is slow decay. And there is an image even more haunting. Scientists built sealed domes, perfect growing conditions, and inside they grew trees, with everything a tree could want: light, water, warmth, and one thing missing: wind. And the trees grew fast, tall, lush, and then, before they matured, they fell over, collapsed under their own weight. Because a tree needs wind. The stress of being bent again and again is the signal that tells it to grow the hard, strong wood, the stress wood that lets it stand. No wind, no strength. The tree, given a life free of all resistance, grew too weak to hold itself up. And you are that tree. The human soul grows its strength the exact same way, through resistance, through being bent and not broken, through carrying what is heavy. Meet no hardship, and you never grow the inner wood that lets you stand when the real storm finally comes. And it always finally comes. This is why a life too carefully protected can produce a strange fragility. Why the smallest setback can feel like the end of the world to someone who has never been truly tested. They were grown in the dome, and they never grew the strength that only the wind can give. And here is the frightening part for our age, because we are building the dome on purpose for everyone. We are engineering the wind out of life, removing every difficulty, smoothing every edge, protecting against every discomfort. And we call it progress. And in 1,000 ways it is. No one should romanticize real deprivation, but Nietzsche's warning still lands. A civilization that removes all resistance from the lives of its people may not be strengthening them. It may be quietly growing them like those trees, tall, comfortable, and unable to stand in a wind that has not yet come. And Nietzsche gave this fear a face. He imagined the kind of human that a world devoted entirely to comfort would finally produce, and it terrified him more than any villain. He called him the last man, not a monster, not a tyrant, something far quieter. The last man is the human being who has given up on everything great, who wants only to be comfortable, and who feels no shame about it at all. Picture his life. He takes no risks. He dreams no great dreams. He asks nothing difficult of himself. He avoids anything that might hurt, anything that might fail, anything that might cost him his comfort. He wants a little warmth, a little pleasure, a little safety, a good sleep at night, and nothing more. He has, as Nietzsche put it, invented happiness, a small, safe, manageable happiness, with every sharp edge of life filed off. He has traded the whole terrible grandeur of being alive for comfort, and he calls that a good deal. And the most chilling detail Nietzsche gives us: the last man is not miserable. That is the horror of it. He is content, satisfied. He blinks placidly at a life with nothing great left in it, and feels no lack. He does not lie awake aching for meaning. He has no room for such things. He has his comfort, and he cannot even imagine wanting more. He is comfortable, and he is nothing. A human being shrunk to the size of his own small pleasures. That, Nietzsche said, is where the worship of comfort finally leads. And you cannot read this over 100 years later without a chill of recognition, because he was describing a warning, and it can feel like he was describing a prophecy, a world that increasingly asks of us nothing hard, that offers endless comfort, endless distraction, endless small, safe pleasures, and gently invites us to want nothing more. The pull toward the last man is not out there, it is in you. Every time you choose the comfortable numbness over the difficult living thing. The question Nietzsche leaves you with is sharp. Are you becoming someone? Or are you slowly, comfortably becoming the last man? But comfort is only half of the modern wound. Nietzsche saw a second collapse, deeper, more dangerous, and the two together explain the strange emptiness of our time. Because for most of human history, suffering came with a story, a frame that held it, that gave it a place, a meaning. Your pain was part of something, a test, a punishment, a path, a plan you could not see. And whatever the story was, it did one crucial thing. It made the suffering mean something. And then the modern world arrived, and that frame began to dissolve. Nietzsche gave it his most famous and most misunderstood line: God is dead. He did not say it in triumph. He said it in something close to terror. He was not celebrating, he was diagnosing. He meant that the great shared story, the one that had held Western meaning together for 1,000 years, was quietly losing its grip, and that most people had not yet grasped what that would cost them. Because when the frame goes, the suffering does not go with it. The pain remains, but now it means nothing. It is just pain, random, pointless, signifying nothing at all. And this is the crucial discovery. Meaningless suffering is a different thing entirely from suffering that means something. It is far, far worse. The same amount of pain, with a meaning, can be borne. Without one, it becomes unbearable. It is not the weight that breaks us. It is the weight that means nothing. And now, put the two collapses together, and you see the exact shape of the modern crisis. On one side, we removed as much suffering as we possibly could, and on the other, we lost the meaning that once made the rest of it bearable. Maximum comfort, minimum meaning. And it turns out that is not a recipe for happiness. It is a recipe for a very particular kind of emptiness, the gnawing sense that something is missing that so many people carry today in the middle of unprecedented comfort. We are not suffering more than our ancestors. We are suffering more meaninglessly, and that is a harder thing to survive. And this is why so much comfort leaves us so restless, why we reach for distraction after distraction and never feel full. Because comfort can numb the pain, but it cannot give us meaning. And meaning is the thing we are actually starving for. You cannot fill a meaning-shaped hole with comfort. You can only numb it, quiet it, distract yourself from it for a while. And this is the trap Nietzsche saw us walking into, removing the pain we could, losing the meaning we had, and left strangely hollow in the safest, softest world ever built. So if meaningless suffering is what breaks us, then everything turns on one question: can suffering be given a meaning? And Nietzsche left us a line that holds the whole answer. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Read that again. If you have a why, a reason, a meaning, a purpose, then you can endure almost any how, almost any pain, any hardship, any weight. The meaning does not remove the suffering, it makes it bearable. It gives the pain somewhere to stand. And this was not just philosophy. Decades later, a man would prove it in the worst place human beings have ever built. A survivor of the camps, who watched thousands around him suffer the same horror. And he noticed something he could not unsee. Who survived and who did not was not only about strength or luck or health. Again and again, the ones who held on were the ones who still had a why, someone to return to, a task left undone, a meaning the horror could not take. Strip a person of everything, and if they still have a why, they can endure the unendurable. And he drew from that hell a conclusion that completes Nietzsche. He said that everything can be taken from a person but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, the freedom to choose your own stance toward what happens to you. You cannot always choose the suffering, but you can choose what you make of it, what meaning you give it, who you become inside it. That freedom, no prison, no illness, no loss can ever take from you. And in that freedom lies everything. And you have felt this exact truth in your own life. Think of a pain you went through for a reason you believed in, the exhaustion of caring for someone you love, the struggle of building something that mattered, the sacrifice made for a person or a purpose you would do it all again for. It hurt, but it did not break you, because it meant something. Now compare that to pain that felt pointless, meaningless, suffered for nothing. Same pain, but that is the pain that hollows you out. The meaning was the difference between the two. So this reframes the entire task. The goal was never to escape suffering. That is impossible, and chasing it makes you the last man. The real task is to find or to build the meaning that lets the unavoidable suffering be born, to give your pain a why. Because a life will never be free of suffering, but it can be free of meaningless suffering, and that is a thing you actually have some power over, not to delete the pain, but to refuse to let it be for nothing. So meaning makes suffering bearable. But Nietzsche reached for something higher still, something almost impossible. Not just to endure your fate, not even to accept it, but to love it. He gave it a name, 2 words in Latin, Amor Fati, the love of fate. And he called it his formula for human greatness. That a person should want nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity, not merely to bear what is necessary, but to love it. Sit with how radical that is. It is one thing to survive your suffering, another to accept it, but to love it? To look back at your worst days, your deepest wounds, your greatest losses, and to want none of it undone? Because, Nietzsche's logic runs, you are not a set of separate pieces. Your life is one woven thing. The person you are, the depth you have, the things you treasure most, grew directly out of your wounds. Pull out the suffering, and you unravel the whole cloth. To wish away the pain is to wish away the self that the pain created. Amor Fati is saying yes to all of it, because it is all one. And Nietzsche built a test for this, a thought experiment as beautiful as it is terrifying. He called it the eternal recurrence. Imagine a demon comes to you in your loneliest moment and says, "This life, the one you have lived, you will live again and again, infinitely, every joy and every pain, every triumph and every humiliation, exactly the same, down to the smallest detail, forever." And then he asks you one question: do you want it? And how you answer, Nietzsche says, reveals everything. For most people, the thought is crushing. A life of the same pains, repeated forever, sounds like hell. They would grind their teeth and curse the demon for the horror of it. But imagine the person who could hear that and say, "Yes, yes, I would live it again, all of it, the pain included, not because it was painless, but because it was mine. And I would not trade one moment of it, even the agony, for a smoother life that was not this one." That person is free in a way almost no one is. They are no longer at war with their own existence. Because think of how much of your suffering is not the pain itself, but the fight against it, the endless protest. This should not be happening, not to me, not this. It is not fair. That protest, that war with reality, is a second suffering, laid on top of the first, and it is often the heavier of the two. Amor Fati does not remove the first pain, but it ends the war. It stops the exhausting fight against what already simply is. And in that surrender, that strange, fierce yes, there is a peace that no comfort could ever give. So bring it all together now, and watch the picture you started with completely invert. You began believing the good life was the comfortable one, the one with the suffering removed. That was the goal, the whole project. Remove the pain, and what is left must be happiness. But follow it all the way down, and it collapses. Because a life with all suffering removed is not a life with all the good left intact. It is a life with all the depth removed too, all the meaning, all the greatness, gone with the pain. Remove the wound, and you remove the pearl. Remove the wind, and the tree cannot stand. Remove the struggle, and you get the last man. Comfort, pursued as the highest goal, does not deliver you to happiness. It delivers you to a soft, safe, well-fed emptiness. The suffering you spent your life fleeing was carrying the very things you were looking for. Because the wound was never only a wound. It was also a door, the place where life breaks you open, and where, if you let it, the depth, the meaning, the realness finally gets in. You were taught to flee suffering, but a life spent fleeing suffering is not a life without wounds. It is a life without depth. The pain you run from is the same door you must walk through to become anything at all, and you can see this in people. The one who has never been touched by real hardship, who has kept themselves perfectly safe, perfectly comfortable. There is often a strange thinness to them, a quality of being untouched, unmarked, and somehow, because of it, less real, as though a person who has never suffered has never fully arrived. The depth, the weight, the substance we recognize in a fully human being was all along carved by pain, and the perfectly protected life, however pleasant, leaves the soul somehow unfinished. Now I have to stop and turn the hardest light on everything we have just said, because this idea is a knife, and held wrong by the blade, it does terrible harm. So before you carry it out into your life, you need to know exactly where it cuts, because taken carelessly, this philosophy becomes monstrous. It has been used for centuries to justify the unjustifiable, to wave away suffering that should have been stopped, to tell the abused, the exploited, the crushed that their pain is good for them. So hold it carefully. There are three things this idea must never be allowed to become. First, and most important, it is not true that all suffering makes you deeper or stronger. Much suffering simply destroys. Trauma is real. Some wounds do not open a door, they just break something that does not heal. There is suffering that teaches nothing, that deepens nothing, that only takes. To look at a person crushed by that kind of pain and tell them it is secretly a gift is not philosophy. It is an insult. The forge can make a blade, but the same fire can also just burn a thing to ash. Never forget which one you are looking at. Second, beware who is speaking. It is very easy to praise suffering from a comfortable chair, to write beautiful words about the nobility of pain while safe, well-fed, untouched. There is something obscene about a person who has suffered little, lecturing a person in genuine agony to simply love their fate. To the one truly trapped in unchosen extreme suffering, these fine ideas can be a cruelty. Amor Fati is something you may one day find for your own pain. It is never something you impose on someone else's. Offer it to yourself. Never force it on the suffering of another. And third, the most dangerous of all, this must never become an excuse to allow suffering you could prevent, in yourself or in anyone else. It builds character, is the oldest alibi for cruelty and neglect there is. It has justified every refusal to help, every failure to intervene. If suffering can be relieved, relieve it. If a wound can be healed, heal it. If a person is drowning, you do not philosophize about the depth of the water. You pull them out. The value some suffering may hold is never a reason to permit the suffering you have the power to end. So hold the knife by the handle. The claim was never that suffering is good, or to be sought, or inflicted, or endured when it can be escaped. The claim is narrower and truer, that some suffering is simply unavoidable, that fleeing all of it makes you small. and that the unavoidable kind, the pain you did not choose and cannot escape, can be met in a way that deepens you rather than destroys you. If, and only if, you can find its meaning. That is the whole of it. Held any other way, it becomes a weapon. Held by the handle, it becomes a way to survive the unsurvivable. So held carefully by the handle, what do you actually do with this? How do you live it without cutting yourself? It comes down to a few quiet practices. None of them asks you to seek out pain. Life will bring enough on its own. They only ask that you change how you meet the difficulty that comes anyway, and that you stop mistaking the removal of all struggle for a life well lived. First, stop treating every discomfort as an emergency to be eliminated. Some difficulty is not a problem, it is nourishment. So choose a little hardship on purpose. The cold, the hard exercise, the difficult book, the honest conversation you would rather avoid, the discipline you keep when it would be easier to quit. Small, voluntary struggles, doses of wind for the tree. They keep you from softening into the last man. Do not anesthetize every ache. Some of them are building the very strength you will one day desperately need. Second, when real suffering comes, the kind you did not choose, do not only ask, "How do I make this stop?" Ask a second question, the one that changes everything. What could this mean? What could it make of me? What might it let me understand or give that I never could before? You are not pretending the pain is good. You are refusing to let it be for nothing. You are searching it for the meaning that turns raw suffering into something you can carry, into a wound that opens a door instead of just a wound. And third, practice Amor, Fati on the small things first. You will not begin by loving your deepest tragedy. That may take a lifetime, or never come at all. Start small. The traffic, the setback, the plan that fell apart, the day that went wrong. Instead of the endless protest, "This should not be happening," try quietly the other thing. This is what is. Thus I willed it. And feel what happens. Feel the war with reality go quiet. It is a strange muscle, but you can build it. One small, accepted frustration at a time, until one day you find you can meet something far larger without being torn apart by the fighting. But there is one boundary here that matters more than all the rest, and getting it wrong turns this whole philosophy into a trap. Amor Fati is only for what you cannot change, because there are two kinds of suffering, the kind you can change and the kind you cannot. And the entire wisdom lies in telling them apart. The bad situation you could leave, the harm you could escape, the pain you could heal. That suffering is not your fate to love, it is your problem to solve. Because Amor Fati, aimed at the changeable, is not wisdom at all. It is surrender. It becomes an excuse to stay, to endure what you should be ending. Do not love a fate you could change. Change it. Fix what can be fixed. Leave what can be left. Heal what can be healed. Fight for the life you could have. Amor Fati is not for that. It is only for what remains. The loss that already happened. The thing that cannot be undone. The wound you did not choose and cannot escape. That, and only that, is where you learn to say yes. And there is a last thing I have to say plainly, because it matters more than any idea in this whole episode. If your suffering is not deepening you but crushing you, if you are not being forged but drowning. That is not a failure of your strength. It is not a sign you lack the philosophy. It is a signal, and it means one thing: reach out, to other people, to help, to a hand that can pull you toward the surface, because no meaning is ever found at the bottom, alone. The strong thing is never to suffer in silence, gritting your teeth, loving your fate while you sink. The strong thing is to reach. That is not weakness. It is how the wound becomes a door instead of a grave. You came here believing the good life was the comfortable one, that suffering was simply the enemy, a thing to be removed at any cost. Leave knowing that comfort, chased as the highest goal, is a slow erasure, that a soul, like a tree, needs some wind to grow the strength to stand, and that the suffering you cannot avoid is not a punishment or a mistake or a sign that something has gone wrong. It is the raw material of the depth, the meaning, the realness you were looking for all along. You do not have to want it. You do not have to seek it or love it today or carry it alone. But when it comes, and it will, you can refuse to waste it. You can search it for its meaning, change what can be changed, reach for help with the rest, and slowly, over a whole life, become someone the comfortable version of you could never have been. And one day, impossibly, you may look back at the very worst of it and find that you would not trade it away. Not because it did not hurt, but because it was the fire that made you, you. See what people hide, even from themselves.